Hey everyone, welcome to the Dyl Pickle Movie Network. I am Dylan Randazzo. 'Tis the season, it's time to start talking about Christmas movies. Just kidding, we're still a few weeks removed from that, but hey, there is a Christmas film out in theaters now that I cannot wait to tell you about, and that is The Holdovers, Alexander Payne's newest film starring Paul Giamatti, divine Joy Randolph, and a revelation of a discovery in Dominic Sessa. I know this is coming out a few weeks removed from the film's wide release, but I'm going on vacation, which is why you're getting a bunch of reviews at the end of November because I wanted to fill some dead air. So you're getting this Holdovers review. It's going to hold over a little while till a few weeks removed from its release date, but I think that's okay because I think the more time goes on, I see this becoming a bigger and bigger and bigger hit. So maybe this review is outdated by then because everyone's seen it and loved it. But regardless, I'm going to recommend it to you because I watched it and loved it. In fact, it is my favorite film of the year besides my number one film of the year, which should be no surprise to everyone who watched the review for it, is Oppenheimer. But this is one of my favorite films of the year, if not my favorite. It's like a 1A, 1B scenario. But regardless of ranking, let's get rankings out of it because this is a great movie. It doesn't matter where I rank it. It is a phenomenal movie. As someone who is a fan of Alexander Payne already, I was definitely looking forward to this film. I was a huge fan of The Descendants when I saw it. That's the first film I saw of his. And then I was equally as blown away by Nebraska a few years later. He just has this ability to just capture sentimentality and comfort in such an effortless way. And when I say coziness and comfort, I know Alexander Payne himself has pushed back on those words, saying, "My film isn't cozy. What are you talking about?" And I think it's because he doesn't want cozy to feel like an undermining word to describe his films. Because when you think, it's cozy, it's comfortable, there's almost like a lackadaisical kind of nonchalantness to that term that I think sometimes correlates to laziness or the fact that it isn't as powerful or as impactful. But I think there's a possibility, and in this case The Holdovers and also his other films like Nebraska and The Descendants. I haven't seen Sideways yet. It's a big red flag on my film watching repertoire, but I do think for his films there is a coziness and he is able to find power in that coziness. I think coziness and comfort can translate to power if you are the right director or writer to convey it. And I think Alexander Payne absolutely is the right storyteller for this. Now, regardless of what you think of Alexander Payne, the person, I'm talking about Alexander Payne, the filmmaker. And yes, those lines sometimes blur. But of course, so much of this film is so vibrant and expressive based on the acting in this film that I wasn't watching it the whole time thinking of Alexander Payne, the person, in the back of my head, but rather just how much I love this story, these characters, the relationships. The film follows this kind of Scrooge of a man. He is an instructor at a New England prep school. He is played by Paul Giamatti. And when I say Scrooge, I don't mean that he's an outright dick, but he's a little bit of a bah humbug type person. He's not the happiest, most lovable guy, let's say. He has his flaws.
I don't understand.
That's glaringly apparent.
I can't fail this class.
Oh, don't sell yourself short, Mr. Coates. I truly believe that you can.
He's basically trapped in the school to babysit this group of kids. They call themselves the Holdovers because they are the kids who don't go home on Christmas break for one reason or another, whether they are orphaned, whether their parents are away on vacation and don't want to bring their kid. Yes, that's an actual storyline because some of these parents are not the greatest parents, as we learn, or just for any other reason. Maybe they live in a different country and they can't travel or can't supply the funds to get their kids home. So all the different kids have a reason for being at the school over Christmas break. And this teacher, because of an incident that happens, has to basically be the one that year to babysit the kids.
I had you guys stuck with babysitting duty this year. How'd you manage that?
Now, there's another adult in the picture played by divine Joy Randolph. She plays a cook for the school who also holds over this Christmas break for other reasons. There are reasons involving her child and the reasons why she is kind of at this job and why she stays at this job over the Christmas season. And you find out a lot about all these different characters. And I think character is the number one thing that makes The Holdovers so great, is because each of these characters has their own story, but little threads of each of their stories interweave in such an interesting way. There's one particular student played by Dominic Sessa, Angus, that really bonds with Paul Giamatti's character. At first, they kind of clash heads, but it's one of those enemies to lovers things. Not lovers in a romantic sense, but a loving bond, almost like a fatherly son bond. But regardless, they make a really great bond. And also with Mary, divine Joy Randolph's character, the three of them just have such a great connection with one another. And it's like I said earlier, their threads of their stories interweave in such a comforting way to where you feel consoled yourself because you see that yourself in these characters, in different shades of these characters. You can see the frustration in Angus. You can see the stubbornness in Paul Giamatti's character, Paul. I didn't even make that connection that Paul is named Paul. That's pretty great. You also see the heartbreak. You can feel the heartbreak that Divine Joy Randolph is going through. And that's where I go back to the overall idea of coziness and comfortness not necessarily being a dismissive thing. In this case, because it's also set at the holidays, it's set around Christmas time, but also because it's about these people coming together, there's a way for the drama to be a high stakes drama. This is a very high stakes drama. These characters have some deep shit going on in their lives, but the way they connect and the way they come together and the way they interact and the pretty frequent doses of comedy throughout make this a comfortable Christmas film.
I don't think I've ever had a real family Christmas like this before. Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
And I think it's just kind of a Christmas thing in general, or a holiday film in general, like, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Home Alone, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, even that scene where they're at Christmas time. Like, there's a cozy feeling you get, and that doesn't necessarily undermine the stakes of a film. That's why I kind of push back on Alexander Payne's criticisms of the criticisms that, oh, it's so cozy, it's so comforting. But that is the way I felt watching this movie. I felt comforted. There was a sense of serenity watching this film, and I think that is a power that his films have, and it's something you see in Nebraska and The Descendants. The Descendants deals with some pretty heavy topics as well. The wife is in a coma. She was having an affair before she went into the coma. It's about the husband trying to find the cheater. It's some dark stuff. Nebraska deals with old age and the potential of dying and having something to actually live for, and these are heavy things. And in the Holdovers, it's dealing with the same things. Dead relatives, relatives who are kind of estranged for one way or another, the absence of love. There's some deep stuff going on, but it's overall coded in a very sentimental, warm hug kind of way. It does feel like the dad film of the year, and I mean that as a compliment. Every year there's kind of a film that everyone can kind of universally get behind and just feel good watching it, even if it deals in heavy stuff. Last year, Top Gun Maverick was kind of that bill, where yes, it's a little less heavy than this, I would say, but there's still some heavy stuff going on in the film, but people love it because it gives them that sense of comfort. That doesn't mean it's a lesser film.
Being here with you is already one big detention. Son of a bitch, that's another detention.
I feel like it's very hard to find something to not like about it, if that makes sense. Maybe some people won't like the kind of old-timey aesthetic because this is kind of filmed like a 70s film. It kind of feels like Oscar bait films reminiscent of the time of like Ordinary People, Dead Poet Society. Ultimately, I do feel a lot sadder watching Ordinary People or Dead Poet Society than I do The Holdovers, which I think is also a good compliment for this film because it's also one that you can rewatch over and over and over and over again, and I don't think you can get sick of it. Now, I've only seen it once, and I don't know how I'll feel about it after I watch it over and over again, but it's a film I want to watch over and over again, like I have a lot of other Alexander Payne films, because he just has that ability to make something comfortable, to make something that you just want to live in and sit in and just enjoy. Like, this film is already pushing 2.5 hours, if not 2.5 hours. Let me look. And 2 hours and 13 minutes. Yeah, so it's about 2.25 hours. Yet I feel like it went by like that because it's so well paced. But I also wish it could have been 3 hours longer because I just want to spend time with these characters. And I think that's just such a great testament to all the acting and all the writing and all the construction of the direction. So please, Alexander Payne, comfort and coziness is the utmost compliment. I promise you. So now let's get into the acting really quick before we go. Paul Giamatti, this is one of his best performances, if not his best performance. I think also because Paul Giamatti is always kind of given that supporting role to kind of add to the protagonist's story. You know, he was the driver in Saving Mr. Banks. He was the manager in Love and Mercy, the manager in Straight Outta Compton. There's a lot of similarities in those roles. He's the trainer in Cinderella Man. Like, he always feels like he's supporting the lead. Here, like Sideways, he gets to be front and center. And while I haven't even seen Sideways, I can already tell you the Payne Giamatti combo is dynamite. It's gold. It is perfect.
I find the world a bitter and complicated place, and it seems to feel the same way about me. I think you and I have this in common.
I think he is really great here. He also has like a lazy glass eye type thing going on, which I was a little worried was going to be a little bit distracting, but they do draw attention to it, and there's some funny bits around the glass eye, and it's not enough of a distraction to where the whole time you're not focused on it. But sometimes, occasionally, if a scene is going on maybe a minute longer than you feel like it should, you can just look at his glass eye a little bit and just be like, wow, like that's movie magic right there. You know what I mean? And then Divine Joy Randolph, she is such a beautiful soul, and she has such a heart-wrenchingly amazing supporting performance in this thing. She's not in it as much as the other two guys at the center of it, but when she does come in and have those really powerful scenes, they stick with you.
You don't tell a boy that's been left behind at Christmas that nobody wants him? What's wrong with you?
And I've had her at the top of my supporting actress predictions ever since Lily Gladstone moved to lead for Killers of the Flower Moon, and I think I'm going to keep her there. Obviously, The Color Purple hasn't been seen by anybody yet at the time of this review. I'm recording this a few weeks before vacation, so I don't know. I know The Color Purple has screened a few screenings since then, so I don't know if Danielle Brooks or Taraji P. Henson are going to emerge as the front runner, but right now, I would say bet your money on Divine Joy Randolph because she is that good, and I think she's legitimately deserved of that Oscar. Sometimes people are Oscar frontrunners, and I'm like, I see it, but like I don't agree with it. Here, I would absolutely agree with it, and I would walk to the Academy barefoot to give her that Oscar if they asked me to. Like, I really think she's incredible in this thing. And then the surprise performance, Dominic Sessa. This is a name I want you to remember. I want everyone to remember. And I think we're going to remember because this is a breakout performance like no other. His character, I think, has the most interesting arc of this whole film because he has the most secrets that are revealed as the film goes on, despite him feeling like a very extroverted, open book type of a person. I think that's a really interesting character choice. The fact that he is very, loud and makes his voice heard, yet there's such underlying stuff under the surface. What he's achieving as an actor in this film is really, really impressive. It reminds me a lot of Lucas Hedges in Manchester by the Sea. Not necessarily the weight of what his character is going through. I mean, I guess you could say it's comparable in a way, but I think in just terms of the type of performance it is, where you're going into the movie expecting powerhouse performances from the two more known names here. You're expecting Giamatti and Randolph to be like the highlights, but then this kid comes along and just blows them out of the water. And that's not to say they're not great, but he ends up being the standout in a film with acting legends. That's kind of how Lucas Hedges was in Manchester by the Sea. Everyone was talking about Affleck Williams, and then they saw the film and they were like, wow, Lucas Hedges. And I think this is one of those breakout performances where I think all three performances work in such perfect harmony with one another. But Dominic Sessa, because he's a newcomer and because we haven't seen anything of him yet, and because his character is so layered and complex, it's almost more impressive. And I really, really hope in probably the most stacked Oscars supporting year ever with two Poor Things performances, two Past Lives performances, a Robert Downey Jr., a Robert De Niro, a Ryan Gosling, a Charles Melton. I'm hoping Dominic Sessa can break into that nine some of people. I don't know if it's going to happen just because he is a newcomer, but if this is a Manchester by the Sea type moment for him, I would love to see him be the Lucas Hedges of award season where people are like, who? And then they watch it and they're like, wait, he should win. Because legitimately, when I'm looking at all the supporting performances this year, like Ryan Gosling, it was a perfect Ken. Robert De Niro is terrifying in Killers of the Flower Moon. I even think Robert Downey Jr. is giving perhaps his career best work in Oppenheimer. But something about Dominic Sessa's performance still puts him above those three. Like, I legitimately think it is the best supporting performance of this year so far, and I will probably stick by that by the end of the year, but I do still have a few big awards contenders to see. But I am such a fan of his performance, and I'm a fan of this film. I'm a fan of Alexander Payne's work. I'm a fan of Divine Joy Randolph, Paul Giamatti. This film just has everything going for it. And I think the only thing separating it from putting it at number one is just because of the almost technical masterclass that my number one film of the year, Oppenheimer, had. But that's like comparing apples and oranges. It's like comparing a really huge train to a sports car. They're both amazing vehicles, but one's a train and one's a sports car. They're two totally different things. They'll both get you to the same place you need to be in probably the same amount of time at efficient speed, and you can make the train look beautiful and you can make the car look beautiful, but it's a train and a car, so it's like hard to compare. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about here. And I don't want my ranking of films to kind of get in the way of how I feel about this, because the Holdovers of any film this year, even over Oppenheimer, is the one I would say everyone can enjoy, will enjoy, and should enjoy. Like, I could see some people being, not fans of Oppenheimer for reasons. I could see people not loving Barbie for some reasons, or not even liking, I don't know, what are some other, like Spider-Verse, which is very, very well acclaimed. Whereas the Holdovers, I genuinely would be interested to find a person who doesn't like this movie. And if they don't, I'd love to hear it. And if you don't, let me know in the comments. But I really think this is just one of those universal films. And it is a Christmas movie, which I think is also kind of what I was saying earlier about the coziness. Like there's this idea that when you think of the greatest Christmas films, it's films you watch every single year with their family, like A Christmas Story or It's a Wonderful Life or Elf or Die Hard. You know, these films that are just constant rewatches every year because they make you feel that excitement, that warm, cozy, grab a cup of hot cocoa, sit down with your family, cuddle a little bit, and just enjoy. You know, that's kind of what this film feels like. But because it's also a prestigious Oscar film, there's almost an extra oomph that I think even sets it above some of those heralded Christmas films. I legitimately think this could be one of the great all-time Christmas classics when we're looking back on it maybe 50 years from now. Even 10 or 20 years from now, I think we'll consider it a modern classic.
This is your Rubicon.
Do not cross.
The Rubicon.
I could talk hours and hours about this. I'm not going to because I have to edit this down eventually. And because I'm going on vacation, I have to edit like 20 other videos. But regardless to say, I love The Holdovers, and I am excited to hopefully talk about it on Picture This, assuming it gets a Best Picture nomination. So you'll hear more of The Holdovers talk, and you'll probably see it nominated for some Pickle Awards if I had to guess, because I make those awards. So yes, you will see it at the Pickle Awards. So thank you so much for watching. I've got other reviews up the wazoo this week. I don't know the order the reviews are coming out, but there's a Killers of the Flower Moon review out there. There's a Hunger Games Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes review out there. There's a New York Film Fest wrap-up video out there. So there's a lot of good reviews to enjoy this Thanksgiving season, or post-Thanksgiving season, I should say, as these are going to be released in the last 2 weeks of November. By now, I hope more people have checked it out, but if you haven't checked out The Holdovers, get to it before it's out of cinemas, even though it should be in cinemas over December because it's a Christmas movie. It would make sense, but Hollywood doesn't work that way. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.